Hello and welcome to episode 151 of Pop Culturally Deprived, where each week we watch a movie I've never seen before, which is still most of them, and talk about the good, the bad, and the rubbin'. This week we're going to be talking about Days of Thunder on your Hit the Pace Car podcast. I'm Mandy K, and you can find me on Twitter at Mandy K if you would like to talk 90s race car movies with me.
And I'm Matthew Vose. I'm on Twitter at Matthew Vose. We're now in January, so reset the count on 52 films by women. Let's once more from the top.
And these have to be 52 different movies from the ones you watched in 2019?
No. I think like having now done a 52 films by women hard mode version.
Right.
Now I can just do 52 films.
Okay.
Fine. That's,
okay.
Bleep bloop, 10 achievement points, and move on.
Yeah, I'm super impressed that you finished the hard mode.
Yeah.
Super impressed. That's fantastic.
And then randomly went over it with a film I did not know was directed by a woman that was like, oh, cool, this film that I've not watched all year. That was A Snow Globe Christmas, if you're interested.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Days of Thunder.
Or, as I like to call it, Top Gun with race cars.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us what it's about, or is that now our summary?
I mean, I think that's the summary, because
Yeah.
IMDb doesn't know what this movie is about.
Oh, really?
Yeah. IMDb, hang on, let me pull it up, because it's not what this movie's about. IMDb says, a young hotshot stock car driver gets his chance to compete at the top level.
Okay.
That's not what this movie's about.
Because...
One, he's not a hotshot stock car driver. He's never driven a stock car in his life before this movie starts.
Okay.
And, I mean, he gets to drive in NASCAR. I mean, it's about a guy who races and...
Is it about the guy?
More.
I mean, is this actually Robert Duvall's story?
Actually, I think it is more Harry's story than it is Cole's story, but it's... Plot-wise, there's not a whole lot going on here.
It's a little thin.
So it's really kind of hard to give you a synopsis.
Let's do this at the top, because we might need to refer back to this. NASCAR.
Okay.
And
NASCAR.
stock car. Can you give us the, elevator pitch 30 seconds about them? Explanation?
I mean, NASCAR is the National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing.
Okay.
In case you were unaware of that, it does actually mean something.
Right.
And they say this in the movie. They're called stock cars because the cars are all supposed to be the same. There are rules in place.
Okay.
That in general, I mean, you tweak something here and you tweak something there, but it's not like everybody's supposed to be on equal footing. It's about the driving, not the cars.
Right. Okay. Do we want to talk any more about the fact, certainly to me, it is a Southern American sport?
Apparently, It is a Southern American sport. I honestly didn't know this.
Okay.
I didn't. I read, I found this out yesterday. I was reading an article that was about Days of Thunder, and it specifically said that in 1990, it was not yet a national even phenomenon. It was regional to the Southeast United States, which is where I grew up. So my whole life, NASCAR has been a thing.
Okay.
Every weekend, just listening to this movie was like transporting me back to my childhood.
Okay.
Because the sounds of race cars around a track are the sounds of my childhood.
Right.
All of the time that I spent at my grandparents' on holidays, vacations, Christmas, birthdays, whatever, if it was a weekend during race season, it was on the television.
Okay. Nice.
I am not a racing fan particularly. I personally think it's boring to watch a car drive around in circles for hours.
Okay, you said it. Just so we're clear.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know. I said it. It's completely fine. But my family is not. My family. I have race car drivers in my family. They haven't made it to like national NASCAR level. Like they're still doing local. Like there are local racetracks in North Carolina for sure that I know of.
Right.
And they they build their cars and all of that thing, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much a sport that my family is involved in, even if I am not personally.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I have been to races, to cheer on family. And
nice.
My granny and papa took me to a NASCAR level race when I was younger.
Awesome.
So it's just a thing, and it's always been so ingrained in my life that I honestly didn't know that it was regional. And I know it's more national now. At least in the United. I don't know that it's global.
Yeah, it's definitely not international, I'll tell you.
It's definitely national. But I honestly always thought it was like football or basketball, and it's just something everybody did.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or knew about or liked or something. So,
because I think I've never quite twigged that NASCAR and stock car racing are the same thing.
Okay.
I think if I'd really thought about it, yes, it probably would have come together. But in my head, stock car was trashy cars, numbers graffitied on the side, smashing into each other as they go around a track.
That is the beginnings of stock car racing, yes.
Right.
That's stock car racing before you get to the national level.
Okay.
Yes.
And so it's largely a track that is either an oval or a quadrilateral, a four-sided shape, but with corners.
Yes.
And they're all the same thing, so it comes down to the driving. So presumably just the bravery and knowledge for each corner of how fast you take each corner is basically the thing.
I think so.
And your pit
That's certainly what this movie set it up to be, right?
Because obviously over here, Formula One is the thing in terms of like car racing. And there are formulas beneath that, but that is the big one.
Right. I didn't know what Formula One racing was until probably I was in college, because I thought all car racing was NASCAR racing.
Yeah, so it's not big in the States, although there is now a US Grand Prix, so it probably has gained in traction over the last few years. But that is, there could be 20 or 30 corners. Some of them are hairpins, some of them are gentle, lots of straights, lots of different elements to it, chicanes, and the overtaking in the pits is all part of it. But in some ways, it makes it less exciting because it's so difficult to overtake.
Right.
Because the margins are so fine at the top level. This, certainly the way it's implied in this, is he can catch up and overtake the whole field in a couple of laps.
I feel like that is Hollywood magic.
Okay, is that Tom Cruise exceptionalism?
I think so.
Right, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Fine. Good. That is our little primer on NASCAR.
Yeah.
I'll give you a primer on Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder is a 1990 sports action drama film directed by Tony Scott, story by Robert Towne and Tom Cruise, starring Cruise, Robert Duvall, Michael Rooker, Randy Quaid, Carrie Elwes, and Nicole Kidman. The film also features real NASCAR racers. Critics were not impressed with the film. A line from Wikipedia says criticism was aimed at the unrealistic special effects, characters, screenplay, acting, dialogue, and the similarities to Top Gun. Just one or two things then.
Okay, I'm confused about what they're calling unrealistic special effects.
I'm assuming the car racing didn't gel with them?
I mean, it looked like car racing to me.
Okay.
Nothing stood out to me as being unrealistic.
Okay. Character, screenplay, acting, dialogue, and similarities to Top Gun, however, possibly more fair criticism.
Fair enough.
Despite tensions on set and dubious behaviour from cast and crew and a heavily inflated budget as the production went on and a reduction in budget after Tom Cruise did not win an Oscar, the film was eventually a financial success. It earned $157 million against a $60 million budget, which started off at about $35 million and then kept rising as production went on.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of shenanigans that happened. Lots of weirdness, frankly.
90s movie sets, man.
Yeah, are you doing this on purpose?
No, I'm not.
1990 is the last year of the 80s. Okay?
Oh,
just so we're clear.
Figure out. I saw your comment asking if I was trolling you, and I did not understand what you meant. This is it's from 1990. It's got 90 in the year name. It is a 90s movie. This is not an 80s movie.
It is the 10th year of the 80s because lists start at 1 and end at 10.
All right. This is how about this? A late 80s, early 90s film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we compromise on that?
We can indeed.
All right.
Do you find it over there? Have you got it anywhere available to watch?
It is on Amazon Prime and Hulu.
Nice.
And if you pay for the subscription to the Roku channel, it's also on that one.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of everywhere.
That's going to help you out this year, isn't it? The Roku channel.
Possibly.
You're going to find lots of stuff. Over here, it's available to rent everywhere, but I was able to get a free trial of the Stars channel. So I watched it on Stars.
Okay.
On Amazon.
Right.
And then because I had a week, I was like, right, I'm going to go through. I'm going to find every other film on Stars that I want to watch. I could find one other film that I had not watched that I wanted to watch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Fortunately, it was Whip It, and Whip It was amazing. Can we just talk about Whip It for an hour?
Is that the Drew Barrymore, Ellen Page skating movie?
It is. Have you seen it?
Okay. I have not.
Okay, it's going on the list.
All right.
It's going on the list for this. It's going on the list for Southern Fried Pop. We're going to talk about that everywhere we can.
Does it count as a Southern movie?
It's deep in the heart of Texas.
Yeah, that's... okay, by our rules, that's not Southern, but we do Texas and Oklahoma movies, so we could probably do it.
I think this would definitely count for the culture that it's talking about.
Okay.
Small town Texas and people going to Austin and pageants and roller derby and stuff. Yeah, good.
You know what movie also counts as being Southern? Days of Thunder.
Yes, well, yes. That was kind of part of the conversation because of the NASCAR links. And you've mentioned NASCAR before, so I knew it was a thing for you. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've done the talk of your experience of NASCAR. And I think I want to find out, did your knowledge of it help compared to the fact that, I was just watching some cars racing. Let's just talk about that cast before we get into it. We've talked about Tony Scott. We've talked about Tom Cruise. I think Robert Duvall's been in at least the Godfather movies. So Nicole Kidman, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, this is our first Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, for someone who's done so many films, that's quite surprising. What do you know of Nicole Kidman?
I've actually seen a lot of her stuff, but when I think of Nicole Kidman, I think of Practical Magic and Moulin Rouge.
Right, okay.
Like, those are my top two Nicole Kidman films.
Yeah, that's fair. They're very you films?
Yes, they are.
I think it's
very
probably
much
a fair way to say it. I'm just having a quick look to see. I've seen 14 of her 99 films.
Okay.
And the most recent of which was Aquaman. Yes, brilliant.
Oh, that's right. I forgot she was an Aquaman.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, nothing stands out. She's just an actress who appears in lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. She was good in Paddington. That's worth watching.
Well, I haven't seen Paddington. Bewitched was not great. I wanted it to be.
Yeah. And the show is so good of Bewitched, so it's such a shame the movie was not.
Right. I mean, Stepford Wives was kind of forgettable.
Oh, yeah.
So. But Practical Magic and Moulin Rouge.
Nice. Good.
Awesome.
So, did you enjoy Days of Thunder?
I actually did. I'm really surprised I did, honestly. And I really wanted to because I want to continue this trend of I've never seen a Tom Cruise movie I didn't like.
Okay.
And I have continued that trend. But...
Hang on. Didn't we watch something you didn't like?
No, that was a Tom Hanks movie.
Okay.
I have seen a Tom Hanks movie I didn't like. Not a Tom Cruise movie that I didn't like.
Okay, fair.
So Joseph doesn't like Days of Thunder.
Oh.
And my impression was that you also did not super enjoy it because I told you I still had to watch it and your reaction was, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm very sorry.
So I was kind of expecting it to not be a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just enjoyed it the whole way through.
Yeah, okay. Get into detail on that. What did you enjoy?
I may have to say I enjoy this for the same reason that I really enjoy Talladega Nights.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, they're very similar movies.
Right.
It's just one is drama and one is stupid humor comedy.
Okay.
But they are very similar.
Both with John C. Reilly.
Both with John C. Reilly. And Talladega Nights actually takes itself seriously. as far as the racing goes.
The core racing, absolutely.
Yeah, it takes the characters are caricatures and over the top and ridiculous, but the racing culture they take it very seriously. And so it's very similar to this one, and it reminds me of home. And I think that's the main thing. It reminds me of home so much. Like the sounds, the visuals, the way people talk. Like Robert Duvall's character is like so many people that I know in my life.
Really?
Or at least grew up around. You know, watching them build the car, watching him talk to the car. I really enjoyed it. Yes.
Oh, the car talking scene, crikey.
Oh, there were two of them, and I thought they were amazing. I loved them.
Okay.
I can sum up my feelings about the movie in 4 words.
Okay.
More racing, less romance.
Yeah, I was really pleased when you put that, because we got to the end and we went, we could largely lift out Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
Certainly the romance aspect of it. Having a doctor, fine. But I didn't care. And it meant nothing.
I think part of that has a lot to do with the timing of the movie, the timeline of the movie. Because this movie takes place over
like a year.
At least a year, if not a year and a half.
Right.
Because we get two Daytona races.
Okay.
At the very least. And so that's definitely the span of a year. And so there's a little bit more time in there. But it doesn't feel like it. Like they don't mark time in the movie. And so it kind of feels like this all happened over the course of a month.
Yeah.
2 months.
Yeah.
Just because they don't give you those markers. And so it feels like there's no reason to be invested. You haven't seen development of these things, even though in the real world, time has passed.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't get to experience that. And like you said, that makes me not care.
Yeah. And it's a shame because, I mean, they have chemistry for obvious reasons. But they do work well together. But in the end, she was irrelevant to the piece. And a distraction from the really good stuff, which was his relationship with Harry, his relationship with the other drivers. There's a lot more that could have been explored. Mm-hmm. Except it's a Tom Cruise movie. There's a romance, and he's the central figure. Yeah. Whereas, like you say, if they focused on Harry and made it about him building this racer in the same way you build a car, would have been really interesting.
Yeah. And I wish we had gotten a lot more of the friendship development between Cole and Rowdy. Like, I knew it was going to happen.
Okay.
After the dinner scene. Like, when they both lied together and they, like, were smiling at each other. And I was like, yep, they're going to be friends.
Yeah.
But the movie just said, okay, now they're friends.
Yes.
Like, we didn't get to see that.
No. Which is
like, all of a sudden, they were just a part of each other's lives. And it would have been much nicer, I think, to see it. If only because Michael Rooker was awesome.
Michael Rooker is very good at what he does.
He is. It's funny. I saw his name in the credits, and I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. And then when he showed up on the screen, I was like, that guy looks really familiar. I hadn't seen Michael Rooker with hair.
Yeah, I did not twig until the scene where Tom Cruise goes and sort of tries to force him to go to hospital. And there was something in there. I was like, oh, it's Yondu.
Yeah. It took me. I mean, I got it before that. I think it was in that first scene, but it took me. Like, I was looking at him like, who is that? Because he's young, he has hair, and his voice isn't quite as gravelly as Yondu's.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, he's probably younger here, isn't he?
Yeah. It's great.
Nice. So yes, we could have lifted out the romance aspect of it. I also think it's a problem that they spend so much of the film talking about Daytona and how important Daytona is. Like, we paused it to get a drink or something towards the end, and they hadn't even gotten to Daytona, and there was only 15 minutes left. And it's like, if you're making this the big, massive, that in a football movie, this would be the game at the end, this would be, the typical sports stuff. And there would be multiple stories going on, but the only story they had by this point, because he can't talk to her, so the romance gets left behind, is can he win the race or not? And it felt like we should have gotten there way, way sooner, and we should have been resolving lots of plots in the build-up to it at Daytona, during the race, that kind of thing. And I think part of that is because the film it reminded me of was Cars.
Yes.
And Cars wholesale rips chunks of this film off.
Yes.
Which I hadn't clicked before, and then watching this going, wow, the bit with him trying to come out ahead of the race car, Cars does exactly that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And other stuff like that. But it's, you know, the final race, the training for the race, the final race at the end is a big piece with lots of different stories going on. And it really works, because it works even that he doesn't win. He doesn't win because he wants to help other people rather than win the race himself. And that makes him a better person. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which they obviously couldn't do in this, because otherwise it would have been him helping Michael Rooker in his last race, which was not the story they were going for. Although we did wonder if Robert Duvall was going to die at one point. Because that was the only other thing they hadn't done that was a kind of sports film standard.
So I think ultimately what they were trying to do is... There were kind of a lot of different storylines that they were throwing in, because we were dealing with Cole's PTSD after the accident. We were dealing with him being the rookie coming in and wanting to come out on top. We were also dealing with him. He did genuinely want to help Rowdy. Like, he didn't get in the car just because he wanted to win. He really was trying to help his friend.
Yeah.
And then you get, this is also kind of Harry's redemption story coming off of, when he started, he was out of racing because of the investigation of Buddy Brotherton. And now this is showing that he really can do the car, train a driver, and come out on top. And so there are a lot of different things the movie was trying to do. And I think it did them all well enough. None of them were great. And I kind of wish they had narrowed their focus a little bit more. And then it probably would have been a great movie.
Yeah.
But I kind of see what they were doing by not bringing us to Daytona until the end, because honestly, these races, they're 500 laps.
Oh, crikey.
It's like 4 or 5 hours of just cars going around and around and around. And they can't show that in a movie, right? And so we got to see him start the race, we got to see a pit stop, and then we got to see the last 10 laps.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's reasonable. You know, unless they really do want to cut away during the race and show something else. But during the race, everybody's going to be at the race. Yeah. And they were. And so, like, I can forgive them not having a ton of stuff at Daytona at the end.
Yeah, like, not necessarily of the racing, but even just getting there. And, you know, him prepping, them prepping the car, him dealing with the relationship stuff while he's there or something.
Yeah.
I mean, she just kind of rocks up. There's no actual resolution to their story.
True.
Yeah, I wish it had gone and done a bit more there. So you said up top that this was Top Gun with stock car.
Yeah.
And I think that is the other big problem with it for me, because you're making this in a world in which Top Gun and other Tom Cruise or films of this ilk exist. So you need to differentiate it, or your audience is going to sit there and going, well, we've kind of done this. You know, we know what this is like. Give us something a bit different.
Even to the point of having him roll up on a motorcycle.
Yeah. It was the bit near the end where he kind of freaks out as he's going into the corner with the crash. And they do that in the final sequence of Top Gun, where he has a freak out moment because it's reminding him of, I think, when Goose died or something earlier in the film.
Right.
And it's like, okay, oh no, now he's through and now he's fine. Now he's going to win the day. Good. Well done him. I quite enjoyed the implication that they invented drafting. Like, we're coming up with this new idea that I'm going to drive behind him and it's going to, you know, clear the air out. Like,
I didn't read that way. Okay. It wasn't as if they invented it. It was, they had to explain to the audience what it was because they wanted it to be a plot point for him to win the race at the end. And that's why they had him teaching Nicole Kidman what drafting was. That was like Chekhov's drafting. Yeah. Honestly. They weren't inventing it. They were just explaining it to the audience.
Oh, I think it came across because he says something like, we've been working on this thing. Like, yeah, so has everyone else since cars were invented. Like,
all right. I didn't pick up on that at all.
And it's funny because he was using the drafting as a technique, but it was actually the thing of him making him think he's going to go inside and then going around him, which I think I've seen in something else, possibly Talladega Nights and Cars. But we could see that coming, but they built up to it quite nicely. But it's almost, well, why did you not... Why did you do the whole thing about the drafting when you've got this other strategy you can use?
Well, because it was a combination of the two. Like, he had to use the draft to be able to slingshot around him, but the direction he went was the outside or inside.
Right.
So, that's all. It worked for me.
I like the moment. I think they almost overplayed their hand on the drafting, perhaps, is the thing.
All right.
Yeah. So, you are very familiar with NASCAR. I am not at all. So I go, yeah, okay, this is a racing film, fine. Is there stuff in this, other than just the kind of the familiarity with it and that level of enjoyment, that sort of helps the film at all? Is there anything you picked up and going, oh, that's quite a niche element of the sport or a nuance that you wouldn't always see?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question, since I didn't know NASCAR was more than regional.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, wasn't more than regional. Like, I thought NASCAR was just, everybody knows about NASCAR, right? And so I don't know what's common and what's not.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So that's just a harder question for me to answer.
No, that's fair. Okay. So my only other experience of this was the fact that I had Days of Thunder for the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Ooh.
I had never seen the film, but
I
had that game when I was, probably 10, something on those lines.
Okay.
Maybe a bit older when I actually had an NES. It's probably more accurate, but had the Days of Thunder game, and it's atrocious. It's one of the worst things. Because controllers back in those days, the buttons were pressed or not pressed. They didn't have any kind of, trigger or depth to them.
Right.
So you were either accelerating or braking, basically.
Yes.
So if you went into a corner at speed, you would smash into the side. But the alternative is to brake and creep round the corners, so you almost couldn't win a race. And then you either were trashing your car or getting overtaken in doing that. And the only way I ended up being able to play through the game was with a Game Genie and a code that made the cars handle better.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's NASCAR, so it's the same game every time.
Right.
You get this little graphic of, like, a dude on a motorbike, and he rocks up and there's a sign next to him that's like Daytona or somewhere in Florida or probably,
Talladega or Rockingham or Indianapolis.
Wherever in Carolina they do it. They do it in Raleigh?
That's Rockingham.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so, well, there's two. There were two in North Carolina. There was Rockingham and then Charlotte. Rockingham is closed now, but the Charlotte Motor Speedway is still there. Just FYI. The NASCAR Hall of Fame is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay. By the way.
Oh, cool.
We took my dad there for Father's Day the year before last.
So, yeah, there was no differentiation between the tracks or what seemed to be going on?
That's interesting because the tracks are all differently shaped.
Okay.
Like, the track shapes are specific to where they are. Like, Charlotte and Rockingham are not the same. Talladega and Indianapolis are not the same.
Right.
They're not all just circles. They're all vaguely oval and they're round, right? But the way the curves, I don't know, they are different.
Okay. Because I think the two tracks you had were an oval or a triangle, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, the other one is, of course, Daytona Racing, which is the ones you get in arcades with the giant seats and 4 things linked together and you have a rolling start and stuff. Always enjoyed them. We would do that pre and post cinema. Growing up, go and have a play on them. But that's the experience of NASCAR and Days of Thunder. Some pretty crappy video games.
The NASCAR Hall of Fame has racing simulators.
Oh, cool.
It's like they have like a practice area that's less fancy. Like the actual, like that you wait in line, like the attraction.
Okay.
Is actual. They have race cars sitting that you get into the race car like you're in a real race car. And then you have to watch, like, it doesn't move, but you're driving it like you are in one of those arcade games. And so you've got the screen, and you're actually playing against the other people in that simulation.
Oh, I like it.
Which is really cool. But when we went, we paid for all three of us to have unlimited simulations, but I did so terribly in like the practice that I never even got in the car.
Oh.
I was like, I'm going to ruin this for so many people. So my dad and my brother both did the car one, but I did not because I am a terrible race car driver.
Oh, man.
It was still fun, though.
Good.
Yeah. And if anybody is vaguely interested in NASCAR and is ever in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, I do recommend going to the NASCAR Hall of Fame because it is really interesting.
Nice.
And it's a relatively quick tour through, but you get to see the history, and there's like so many artifacts, and like there's actual race cars. You can see actual like racing suits and how that has like evolved over time, and it's interesting.
Okay, cool. Is Charlotte the state capital?
No, Raleigh is the capital.
Oh, okay. Because is there a basketball team in Charlotte?
It was. It left. It may have come back.
Okay. Because that's my experience from NBA Jam. I think
Charlotte. Yeah, the Charlotte Hornets were there for most of my life, but then they left. I think they went to Texas or something.
Okay.
They may have come back, but I'm not positive about that.
Okay.
I don't pay attention to sports ball.
Are there other aspects of this film you want to talk through?
I think before I get to my favorite parts, I think the one thing that I really wish they had done more of was showing Harry teaching Cole about cars.
Agreed.
And how the way he maneuvers the car can make him a better driver. Like, they told us that happened. They didn't show us. Right? I mean, we got the one scene with the tires. Like, 50 laps your way and 50 laps my way.
Yeah.
But it would have been nicer to kind of see that relationship evolve more and have him really be that teacher figure. Like, I wanted to see it on screen rather than them tell me.
Yeah, completely agree. And that's, I think, that moment of him teaching him something and showing the practical example of it, that is absolutely a standard sport film tropey thing. At some point, the coach has to almost belittle to prove their quality rather to the person.
Right. I think that's part of what makes sports movies so interesting. I don't like sports, but I love sports movies. Right. And it's because they do these sorts of things and make the emphasis on the relationships rather than the sport itself. So that by the time you get to the end, you're so invested in the characters, you want them to win at the football or the basketball or the NASCAR racing, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not about the sport. Like, you don't want them to win just because you love basketball. You want them to win because you love the people.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Characters.
Yeah, you're just making me think of all the different sports films, and that's how they do it. You know, Kevin Costner doing golf, or even High School Musical, or there's a soccer film called Goal. And that's the one that made me think about the whole kind of coach teaching them a lesson thing, because our hero doesn't pass the ball very well. He loves dribbling, so he's always trying to go around people and this sort of thing. And so the coach pulls him aside and is like, can you take the ball and go and score in that goal? And the coach then takes the ball and lumps it over his head and into the goal way faster than he can run it there. And he then brings him back up the pitch and says, right, do it again. And he does this 3 times in a row to sort of show him that, you know, you can score with a pass rather than running it.
Right. Yeah.
And then he says, right, what have you learned? You're really good at target.
I don't think that was the point.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you enjoy? Because you enjoyed the film as a whole. I did. It's interesting how it doesn't sound like there was a moment that got you or a thing that really did it. I mean, is there anything you can point to that you loved?
I mean, I was in it from the beginning, honestly. And I think that's the nostalgia factor because it reminds me of home so much, honestly. But the entire relationship, like every time Robert Duvall and Tom Cruise were on screen together, I loved it.
Yeah.
Those two are so good. Like, have they done other movies together? If they haven't, they need to.
I don't think so. Nothing's coming to mind.
I really enjoyed the dynamics of those two.
I'm just having a look at the films that Robert Duvall has done. There's nothing standing out as also having Tom Cruise.
Okay.
I was about to say, oh no, but no, it's Days of Thunder.
Oh.
I liked Robert Duvall because obviously I always think of him from The Godfather, but actually, yeah, he's really good at this kind of everyman just getting on with the job, not necessarily rising to other people.
Right.
Yeah, I always like his performances.
Dude, the last scene of the movie, the one where they like freeze frame it.
Yep.
When he's like, do I need to carry you? Can you walk? Like Tom Cruise is saying that's Robert Duvall, and Robert Duvall's like, Psh, I'll race you. And then he gets up and starts running.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I loved it. Like, I seriously cracked up. Like, I laughed, I clapped. It's one of those great things.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And again, the ending of the film tells us what the film is about. He doesn't go and get a big snog from Nicole Kidman. He goes and
to see Harry
with the coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And, you know, piggybacking off of that relationship, I really enjoyed how in this movie they showed male vulnerability without shame. Even though, so he came across very cocky to start with, but he ended up admitting to Harry really quickly that he didn't understand what he was saying, that he didn't know anything about cars. He was just good at driving them.
Yeah.
You know, he was like up front. He did it in such a way of, I need you to tell me what you're saying because I don't understand. And then when he got into the accident, you know, he was open to hearing what the doctor had to say and understanding, okay, I can't go drive right now. You know, Rowdy can't go drive right now. We are sick. We need to heal. It's okay. Like, it sucks. We want to drive, but we are not less people. Like, we are not lesser men.
Yeah. Because
we have these limitations. And while the movie had a few problematic areas, particularly around the hired stripper, highway patrolman thing, you know, in general, I felt like they did a really good job of portraying male relationships.
Yeah, definitely agreed.
And for this being a Southern movie in the 90s, late 80s, that's pretty spectacular. And it made me appreciate the movie even more.
Yeah, there was some of that stuff it did really well. I felt a little that it might have been a bit unearned for him to suddenly open up about what his problem was. And it flip-flopped on his character a little bit, because you're absolutely right. It did some really good stuff with him convincing Rowdy to go and, you know, get medical help and trying to sort things out. But at the same time, he's trashing cars and reacting on the track and, you know, trying to race a taxi driver, stuff like that. I don't think they quite sort of threaded the needle on his character, or either showing character growth, or, you know, he is a nice, gentle person, but he needs the competitive side to win the race or something.
Yeah.
They just were his character.
Right, yeah.
But he's not necessarily the protagonist. So...
That's fair.
Just, he wrote the film, so he rocks up on a motorbike.
No, he had the story idea for the film.
True.
The other guy wrote the film.
The other guy, who's a proper writer.
Yeah.
He wrote, like, Chinatown, which is one of the best written films ever.
Haven't seen it.
What were the other things? I saw he had this whole list of stuff that's really good. Because after this, he then did The Firm and 2 of the Mission Impossible films. So he and Cruise obviously worked well together. But yeah, he'd worked on uncredited work on The Godfather. He'd worked on Chinatown, Heaven Can Wait, Reds, Greystoke, which is supposed to be quite good. Never seen it, but what on him?
What about you? I know you weren't particularly excited about this movie, but were there things that you liked?
Yes, there's a couple of moments where it wins me over, but then it never does anything with them. We've not mentioned Randy Quaid.
Dude, Cousin Eddie cleans up so well.
Right? But even more than that, I mean, Randy Quaid has made a career from playing schmuck idiots.
Yeah.
You know, Cousin Eddie, the father in Independence Day. He's one of the bowlers in Kingpin. And I seem to remember him being very similar in that as well. Although it's been a very long time.
Right.
But in this, he is in charge, confident businessman doing stuff. And he's really good at it. His performance might be the best of the film. But part of that might obviously come from the fact that it's Randy Quaid, and I did not expect this performance from Randy Quaid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, did it stand out to you as different from what he normally does, or?
Yes. I mean, even just the way he looked, the way he carried himself was very different than what you usually see, because we usually get that over-the-top craziness.
Yeah.
Like, he's always this eclectic kind of outsider sort.
Absolutely,
And here, he was the owner of a race car team, right? Like, he owned cars and the drivers, and he was a proper businessman.
Yeah. It was such a surprise to have that. I would have expected him to be the John C. Reilly character or something like that, or another idiot driver who Tom Cruise replaces, something like that. But no.
Right, yeah.
He's the boss. And then
he is?
They give him the moment in the end where he comes good and helps them out because he's actually a decent human being.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I really actually enjoyed that moment too, where he has his team help push him out of the pit to get him there faster. That was nice.
It's good.
Yeah.
The moment that stood out for me and had me absolutely rolling in a fit of laughter was as they're being wheeled down the corridor in the hospital. And as they're going, they start wheeling themselves a bit faster and a bit faster and a bit faster. And then they are properly racing around the hospital in wheelchairs.
Yes.
And like, almost that's where it seems like it's going to try to do a thing about they need this competitive spirit. They can have fun with it, but they need it on the track as well. And that's how they live their lives. I think after this, it only comes out in aggression or on the track. But that moment was genuinely funny. It was a surprise in the middle of the film. And I liked it. And I'm disappointed the film didn't then go further than that. But it was so good.
Okay. See, well, and I see the motivation as slightly different than you. Like, I wasn't reading it as they have to always be competitive. It was specifically these two are the top two. They just caused each other to wreck. And they don't know yet who's better. So they're always going to be competing against each other to try and figure that out. It's not... It was specific to those two characters.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So, like, I feel like if it had been any other race car driver besides Rowdy with Cole, they wouldn't have done that. But it was Rowdy and Cole, and that's why they did it.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if this is just, it's the typical story in a sports film. So you kind of expect that about, you know, they compete over everything.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, that was a good moment. That I liked.
Okay. Well, I'm glad there was something.
Yeah. So was I, frankly.
Okay, well then, is there anything else that we need to discuss about Days of Thunder?
Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder. I don't know what that even means. No one says it in the film, and I don't think it's actually a phrase that people use. And if you told me it was a film called Days of Thunder, I'd be like, oh, that's some story about a kid going to live on an Iowa farm in the stormiest season they've ever had, and he
like Twister
fell in love with a girl. Yeah, something like that. But you know, the kind of, and it starts off with him as an old man recounting, well, I remember when, you know, I had to go and live, and we called them the Days of Thunder. But no, Days of Thunder as a reference to the Cars. It means nothing. It's a ridiculous title.
I mean, I assume it has to do with the sound of the race cars.
But then say
it's just
that,
like
you know?
Days of listening to this rumbling. Like thunder rumbles, race cars rumble.
Yeah, but it baffles me. Absolutely baffles me. I wonder if there is a scene where someone mentions it and they go, let's just take it out. That's an awful scene.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, well, there we go. Good.
There we go. All right. Well, if you would like to join the conversation and tell us a different movie title for Days of Thunder, you can use the hashtag PCDeprived on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Eloquent Gushing, or you can send an email to podcast@eloquentgushing.com.
Pop Culture Deprived is completely funded by listeners like you through Patreon. Anything you can give, even $1 a month. It gives access to exclusive content, helps us support the network, and it helps us to develop new shows. If you want to find out more, go to patreon.com/eloquentgushing.
And we'll be back next week where we are going to talk about Star Trek Generations. Until then, I'm Mandy Kay.
And I feel the need for... No, wait. Pop Culturally Deprived is an Eloquent Gushing production. For more information, go to eloquentgushing.com or find us on Twitter @eloquentgushing.